the craziest story that I think came out of this week has to be the Minnesota Vikings. And
Yes.
and there's a lot to dissect here.
Great point.
I mean, you go in with the idea of a rookie quarterback starting in Jaren Hall. And for all intents and purposes, that opening drive was very strong. It looked very promising in what you saw to Jaren Hall. He gets the team to the 3-yard line, takes a massive hit. I guess it's his welcome to the NFL moment, but you never want to see that happen. Like, you got to learn to go down. He'll have a lot of time in his career to figure that out. And in comes the guy who they had just traded for, Josh Dobbs, practicing on the sideline, trying to learn the cadence. He doesn't even know the names of his teammates. And we need to provide context here, because when you get traded in the NFL, you have to obviously come and learn into a whole new system. And if you're a running back, a receiver, you pretty much know like what your position is. It's pretty much the same thing. As a quarterback, it is drastically different. So to come into that position is mind-blowing. And he put out a hell of a game, an absolute baller. Sim, I know you got a lot of things to talk about here. I can see you just so giddy to chime in. So what was your thoughts on the Josh Dobbs experience?
I think everything that Josh Dobbs has stood for the last couple of years. I mean, this guy has been bouncing around. And a lot of people forget that he was the quarterback for the Titans last year, and they had that must-win game against the Jaguars to get into the playoffs, right? And then the Jaguars won, but they struggled for most of that game. Like, Josh Dobbs kept them in there. This guy is a guy with an aerospace engineer. Like, this guy should be working at NASA. Yeah, and he's working in the NFL. Couldn't find his jersey in the Arizona Cardinals team shop. I hope that they have it in Minnesota, because this is a guy, and I don't know if you saw Seth, but Kevin O'Connell, the head coach, was saying to his team, he goes, "Hey, this is who he is. This is what we love about the NFL. And when he comes in from his post-game interview, let's show him the love." And they all went nuts for this guy. And that's what I love about football. And I didn't play it like you did, but you see it, and you see it on the sidelines, and you see it in the huddles, and you see it in the locker rooms, that brotherhood that unites them. And a win like that, I mean, he didn't know anyone's names. These guys were like, "We're taking you out for dinner. Like, we've got you covered. Like, anything you need." CJ Ham's like, "You're my guy." Like, the fullback, he's one of like the captains on the team. They came into this game, they were all wearing Kirk Cousins t-shirts. I don't know if you saw that before the game. It was really a nice touch. Kirk Cousins, actually, there's a video that was him throwing a ball with his kid and saying he's the only receiver I can throw to today, because he was sitting on his couch with a torn ACL. And watching his team now win 4 in a row. Well, now 1 without him, but 4 in a row. They've done these 4 games. They've gone at Green Bay. They've won at home against the San Francisco 49ers, at Chicago and Atlanta. So 3 road games, but all 4 of them had without Justin Jefferson. And Jordan Allison's really stepped up. He's got 7 touchdowns. He's up there in the top 2, top 3 for receiving touchdowns in the year. TJ Hawkinson's that reliable blanket, the guy that they traded for right at the deadline last year, right before the deadline. He's had a huge impact for them. Defensively, Daniil Hunter leads the league in sacks. There are so many questions about the Vikings, and they started off so slow, 1-4, and everyone was like, they're done. Like, this is the Lions division. Now they're in a playoff spot. Like, if the season ends today, they're in a playoff game with Josh Dobbs as their quarterback. And you're right, Josh Dobbs didn't know the guys on his team. He didn't know the guys in the huddle. There was a shot of him with the offensive lineman saying, "Okay, what are the Kansas and what are your names?" Like who are you and who are you? You're the guard, okay, you're the tackle. So if I have to tell you to motion this, and he had this great quote. It's like, imagine you're studying for AP French, and you're just like studying for months and months and months, and then on the week of the test, or like the day before, you're like, no, it's AP Spanish, and you're like, I have to learn an entirely different language. And we've now seen it twice in 2 years where a quarterback has come in on a short week and has delivered a win. The only difference is that Baker Mayfield did it with the Rams at home in LA against the Las Vegas Raiders. This was on the road. Seth, what do you think about quarterbacks' ability to do that? Is it so much about the player itself, like a Josh Dobbs or last year Baker Mayfield, or the head coaches doing the play calling? What was your takeaway from Josh Dobbs, and how impressive from your standpoint was the way that he was able to rally, come into the game, because he didn't start like you mentioned, and then lead the Vikings to a huge win against the Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, I think it definitely is a combination of the coach and the quarterback, because as a coach, and you mentioned it was the same with Baker and Sean McVay as it was to Kevin O'Connell and Josh Dobbs. As a coach, you have to be mindful of the fact that your quarterback doesn't know your entire playbook. So you've got to condense things. You got to think that much farther ahead in terms of the plays that you can actually call that he might be comfortable with. Also, keep in mind, Kevin O'Connell and Sean McVay are two of the younger head coaches in the league too. So they're maybe a bit more adaptable to something like this happening and being able to craft plays to their quarterback. And that's not an easy thing to do. But then it also has to be a quarterback that has a desire to win, that wants to come in and ball no matter what. When he's on that field, he's there for his brothers. And you touched about all of it, about the type of character that Josh Dobbs is and the resilience that he's shown in every game that he's in. No matter what team's in front of him, he's been competitive. He beat the Dallas Cowboys with an Arizona Cardinals team that no one saw coming too, right? So this is a guy who's just built for these moments. And when you combine that with a head coach like a Kevin O'Connell, like a Sean McVay, who's able to understand the type of player they are, know the person, know the game situation, and then make calls based off that, it creates what we saw, which is this miraculous moment where you're just rooting for this team no matter what to win because of the type of performance they're putting in. And, you know, in terms of what I saw and the best way that I can even try and put my feet into his shoes, it's like, imagine going into a new job. You have this big presentation, this big pitch at the end of the week. You have had to learn some of it just, you know, to know it, to get like acclimated with what your company's doing. But the person who is supposed to run it for your company gets hurt or is sick and can't make it. So you have to come in and just try and pitch this entire performance to this other company. And it's just, you know, it's why we love sports. It's these stories that you never expect them to be written, and yet once you read them at the end of it, you're like, that's an incredible script. You know, it's just phenomenal. And in a week where we saw so many different quarterbacks playing as well too, right? There was, what was it? I think 11 rookie quarterbacks just started in already this year. There's just a lot of different quarterbacks being put into these positions, but Josh Dobbs is definitely the story that was the most exciting to talk about. And I'm excited to see what he does with that offense moving forward when Justin Jefferson comes back. There's a lot of pieces there. There's a lot of excitement in Minnesota. So we'll see what happens.
And I just have one more question for you with Josh Dobbs. What's the more impressive stat for you? The fact that he went for 20 for 30 and accounted for 3 total touchdowns and 0 interceptions. He did have 2 fumbles and did take a safety, or the fact that he averaged 9.4 yards per carry and led the team with 7 rushes and 66 rushing yards.
I would say, so this answer is twofold. What's more impressive is the fact that he went 22 for 32, you said?
20 for 30 for 158.
20 for 30.
Touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
That to me is more impressive, but for Vikings fans who have not had a legitimate RB1 all year, and Cam Akers is now done for the season as well, see that with Josh Dobbs is probably where you're like, okay, we've got a mobile quarterback. Like, that could provide more opportunities in those offense, especially when you bring in Justin Jefferson and you're now extending plays. You know that guy's going to get open. So if you're extending these plays, something that, you know, Kirk Cousins isn't known to do, you might see a whole different look with this Vikings offense.
I agree. Justin Jefferson, huge catch radius. If he rolls out of the pocket, just buys him a little bit more time. You don't have to throw the ball inbounds. He can be 2 feet out of bounds and keep those 2 feet dragged in as well. So it's going to be exciting. Are the Vikings a playoff team? We'll have to be discussing that as the weeks go on.